today, talking with our head of strategy, Ben Fitzpatrick, who leads the biggest campaigns across the company, and he's basically the head of strategy across all of the client campaigns. There's a lot to introduce about Ben, but I think we'll just leave it there right now. But needless to say that he's at the forefront in terms of actually how strategy is created at Web Profits. And so today, we're just going to talk through strategy through the COVID-19 pandemic, through the recession that is sure to follow, and just through the rest of 2020, because I think the conversation is now starting to shift to what do we do for the rest of 2020, you know? And so
that's right.
What's interesting is we were talking about some campaign ideas just for ourselves last week. And Ben was like, you know, there's actually still like 8 months left of 2020. And I think it's really easy to forget that, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot that's happened, that's for sure. So it's, there's lots more to come. And I mean, we're just at the start of this, really. I think that's the thing that is kind of reinforced for me. Like the calendar year is, you know, relatively arbitrary time frame, but it's just kind of a reminder that, you know, this really just happened. So the repercussions of it are going to be, you know, are going to be ongoing for quite some time, and that needs to affect, you know, how we act as marketers.
Yeah, and I think it's been such a challenging 2 months. You know, I think like if you think about just a second ago, we were having to deal with the bushfires. I forgot about the bushfires. Like, I'm not quite sure about you, like, but you know,
I mean,
like that was at the beginning of this year.
Totally. And I mean, I'm here in New Zealand, and we had this big month of drought, like one of the worst kind of months of drought we've had in quite some time, just before COVID-19 hit. And I mean, you know, I haven't heard. It's like a different life almost, you know. But yeah, just 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, and I think like so much can happen in, let's say, what is it now? So we're recording this on the 5th of May, right? So if you think about, that's only 4 months since the first of the year, yeah? So since the beginning of this year, it's only been 4 full months, right? And if you think just how much has happened in the last 4 months, right? And then you say to yourself, okay, well, there's 8 months left of the year. So if we could replicate 2 times how much stuff has gone into marketing, to business, it's like that could give it some context, right? Because it doesn't seem like a lot of time. Like if you say there's 8 months left in 2020, right? You're like, oh, well, actually, it's not that much time. But we've only gone through 4 months so far of 2020. Like, whoa, okay, well, like
I think also, like, look, hopefully there aren't big, terrible global events, you know, more terrible global events that happen in 2020. But certainly for businesses and marketers to succeed for the rest of the year, they're going to have to perform in the way that they've had to perform in the last 4 months just to get to where we are. Because it's going to get harder, and it's going to get more competitive, and, you know, some markets are going to shrink, and I mean, like, it's going to be a really tough year. So regardless of kind of the global, you know, picture, the reality is, like, we know that there's going to be a lot that we need to do to succeed as marketers in the year ahead. And I think that should frame kind of how everybody looks at it, because it's easy to kind of think, okay, we made it through this, and now we can get back to normal, or back to kind of like normal. So a lot of people like talk about new normal and stuff like that, and like I actually think that's kind of probably a dangerous framing.
Why is that?
Because when you think of normal, you think of I mean, I would kind of relate it to kind of ideas of a bit easier, or you know, you can there's not as much pressure, or there's, you know, you don't have to keep up the intensity. And like, it's been such an intense period that I I think everybody would like to pull back on that, right? Like it'd be nice to, just have a couple months where we have our plan, we work to our plan and optimize within it, and report on what happened, get some good results, like that sounds great right now.
That sounds great.
But I and it might happen, but I wouldn't plan for it. I would plan for it to get harder and more competitive, and everything that has started to work right now for that to evolve as well. I think that's just how you have to look ahead.
Yeah, sure. And I think let's say like in the last 2 months since the pandemic hit, there's been a lot less competition online because everybody's been so stuck.
Yeah.
And I think as part of that stuckness, quite a lot of people or of companies have now started to consider the digital space, in terms of advertising. And so now there's a lot more people that are about to start advertising online, and then everybody that had kind of stopped advertising because of the uncertainty, they're about to start advertising as well. So it's about to get really crowded, right? And it's about to get crowded, I think, at a time when everyone's like, okay, cool, so now we're back online again now. And now we have to make this all work, right? And so, I think that's a good transition to kind of the topic of this podcast, which is actually how do you create a strategy in that challenging environment where everyone's coming online? It's not status quo. We don't know what's going to exactly happen across the globe. I mean, in terms of the pandemic, but then also in terms of the economy, right? And like, that's a difficult place to compete. That's a challenging place to live, and, like in a couple of my emails, I've been talking about survival of the fittest, right? Where it's a contracting economy. The pie is still there. It's a smaller pie. There are the same amount of people who want to eat that pie. And so how do you actually try to carve out a piece of that pie just for you, right? And so, look, I think like in that email that I sent the other day, I shared 10 questions, and I figured, we could talk about those questions in this podcast,
I think
and
so.
So,
like I've thought a little bit about the overall approach that a business needs to take, and there's kind of a couple of things that I think are important that everybody keeps front of mind. The first one is that like the business side and the marketing side, it's never been more important that they're directly connected, because you really need to be open to evolving, your offer, your service or your product to what's going to work. And I think we've seen that across, a number of clients of ours, and businesses, globally, where, they've been able to evolve their service in a way that really fits the moment. And their marketing has immediately been able to evolve with that, or potentially the marketing led that evolution. And I think that's something like as a core like principle, like businesses should try to maintain, which is, where marketing is successful is going to show you where the market is. And so if your product is kind of just right next to that, like move it over into it. And that's like a lot, smaller businesses are better at that. Bigger businesses generally really struggle with it. But we've seen some great examples of larger businesses kind of developing whole new services just for right now. And that's, I think, something that shouldn't let up, because we just don't know where the market is going to be, what consumer, like I remember we talked about at the start of this, I was saying, look, consumer habits are going to change dramatically and all of these things. And you were telling me, we don't know that. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, how there's going to be changes, there's going to be repercussions, but we have no idea what they are. And I think it's important to keep that mindset. So that's kind of the first one that I've been thinking about. The next is that like a lot of businesses have pulled back on different parts of their marketing. And so I think a lot of businesses potentially have lost some of the fundamentals in the process. Like, to me, the fundamentals of digital marketing are paid search, organic SEO, social ads, and email marketing. Like, that's pretty much, to me, there's rarely a case of a business that I wouldn't, push to try to do, something across all of those. The balance between them changes a lot between different industries and businesses. But, a lot of businesses will have pulled back on the, turn off search or turn off Facebook ads or something like that. And as they come back, I think it's important that they take a step back and actually make sure that they do have, all of the fundamentals in place before they try to do something big. Like, don't run a big campaign if you don't have the, all the ad strategies to get the most out of it. And then the last one is one that I've been thinking about, which is a bit strange, but it's to document everything, because there's so much change going on in terms of messaging, and it's really easy to, and products and services and what you're marketing, but it's really easy to have, one place in your ads that you're saying something completely different, or you may find an opportunity and really want to pivot everything over to that opportunity really quickly. And if you don't have documented what you're doing right now and what you've previously done, then it's really difficult to go out across all your digital and find it, and know where on the website to change, and know all the different search ads you need to change. And I think consistency right now is more important than ever. Like, if you have a message that you want to put out there, it's important to be consistent about it. And part of that is actually just having that kind of internal documentation and organization to know this is what we're doing right now, so that when you decide what's going to work, you can move right onto that quite quickly.
Yeah,
that's kind of the those are the three like big things that I've been thinking about. As I would kind of plan for the year ahead.
Yeah, super points. What's interesting is that 2 months ago, it was all about changing the message, right?
Yeah.
Like, and everyone was scrambling to change the message. And I think, there's still a lot of organizations that haven't changed their message, and they're just kind of holding off, and they're just kind of seeing how it goes. But there's a lot that have. Like, if you watch any of the ads on TV, they've all shifted, essentially. There's quite a lot of change that's already happened, right? And so I think, we assume that the message is right in terms of this podcast right now, like we're not there to talk about the message. I think we've spoken about the message quite a lot. The message is just the cost of entry. Like, if you're not relevant in terms of the thing which you're saying, like, start there. There's some other podcasts that we've done that's there, right? And so we're assuming that the message is now correct, right? This podcast will now speak about, cool, so now actually, how do you stand out when everybody's adapted, when everybody's now talking to people at home, or basically online, or in 2020, or whatever is the scenario that's there. Yeah. And then how do you now compete, right? So I'm just going to go through some of the questions, right? Yeah, and hopefully we can answer them pretty quickly. But it's just kind of, it's more of a discussion right now, So the first question to ask yourself is, where are you the best right now? And what products or services have you got an unfair advantage over your competition? Yeah? So let's talk about that one. How important is this, Ben?
I think this is the start, right? Like, this is what I was just saying about, like, being ready to evolve your products and services. The first step of that is actually understanding which of your products or services are the most relevant right now. I've been, I guess, unsurprisingly, over the last month, doing a lot of work on e-commerce because e-commerce businesses are, a lot of them are doing quite well. And, in that context, it's often about, like, what are the products or services, or what are the products that we can build offers around? And then, those offers are what we can really use to scale your marketing up. but that principle really applies across all, all of marketing. And it is looking at like everything you do and determining what's going to have the biggest impact of breaking through, because you build your marketing around that. In search, there are opportunities to just like build out campaigns for every single service you have, right? Like that's definitely something you can do. And if the volume is there, it could drive conversions. If the volume isn't there, you're not going to pay for it. So, that's kind of fine. But across everything else, you really need to focus on, what can break through.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, I'm saying if you don't know the answer to that, like that's where you start. And there's lots of ways to do it. You can talk to your consumers. You could, put up 5 ads with 5 different services and see which one gets the most engagement. But that's where you start. You got to figure out,
the best is important though, right? Because I think like in a contracting environment, a contracting economic environment, you need to be the best at something, and you need to have an unfair advantage over the competition to really be able to thrive right now. And it may just be like in the mind of your consumer, but there is a difference to your product than to the competition, right? Now, again, it's not that simple oftentimes, but you need to have something super high quality. It could be a product or service or a product range or a suite of services that offer extreme value compared to the competition in some way or another.
You should assume your consumers are going to be more discerning, right? Like there's less money out there, and people still have to buy stuff. They're going to still need services, but they're likely to take more time to think about it. And so it just means it's more important that, you can differentiate yourself.
Question number 2, where are you most profitable and where is the most demand? And I think profit actually makes a difference to how much you can afford to pay to acquire a customer, right? And demand is where the volume is, right? And hopefully you can combine the two, but oftentimes it's not exactly aligned. So if you had to go to, this is a harder question.
It is.
To where you're more profitable or where there's more demand, where would you go?
I think it's complicated. I think this is a question every business has to understand for themselves. Businesses can be really profitable by using loss leaders to bring in customers and then, build up the lifetime value over time. So it's really understanding the overall profitability model across your marketing. Like, I think if you overly focus on, this is my most profitable service, and so I just want to sell that, you can take yourself down the wrong path. That's for sure. And so it kind of ties into what I was talking about in terms of the business side and the marketing side really needing to be fully integrated right now, because that's kind of it just needs to be the ongoing conversation, right? Like if marketing is driving new business, but all of those businesses are unprofitable and then they don't go anywhere, like that needs to change fast, right? Like that's not sustainable. But on the other hand, if it's just kind of a directive of you have to sell this, and whatever that product or service isn't profitable, that's going to fail as well. So this is one of those questions that, I would say it's like, it should probably be part of like your weekly meeting, like something around, what is the profitability of our overall marketing look like right now? And it should be measurable.
I think that's a super point. And this is something that we've been doing internally and with clients as well, is having kind of the regular catch-ups on kind of what's happening in the market. So where's the demand? What are the leads saying? And what are the conversations kind of happening out there? What are the biggest challenges, the objections? And I think keeping your ear to the ground is going to make a huge impact in how quickly a company can adapt, right? To be able to capture a piece of that pie. But next question. So what are the trends in your market and how can you ride that wave? And how can you ride that wave? And I think this kind of links to the previous one, but there's trends that could be increasing right now. And I know this is something which you're spending a lot of time on right now, aren't you, Ben? In terms of, so what are the trends for different clients across their industries? And so, like, what are you seeing right now? But just in terms of your research, because I know this is something that we're looking at, right? Is like, of course, where are the trends actually going?
So a lot of that, I guess we're kind of looking at trends in two places. We're kind of seeing trends in search overall, like just to get an idea of what do people want, what are they interested in, and then we're seeing trends in kind of the marketing platforms in terms of like how much is this costing, what's the cost per impression or click, but then also per conversion. That's kind of the two main areas that it's really straightforward with digital to see trends. I think with search, what I've seen is there was the initial phase when like the trends were relatively predictable. It was kind of like people were figuring out how to work and live from home,
Mm-hmm.
I guess everybody lives at home, but all the time usually.
Sure.
But so there was that kind of phase, and when you looked at trends, like there wasn't anything. There were some funny ones, like you can look up the trend for how to cut your own hair, and there's just this massive spike up, right? Like stuff like that. I've searched that. But now
me too, by the way.
There's
jokes.
But now there's some interesting stuff going on. There's I was looking into furniture, and there's some really strong increases in search volume for things like couches, things like living room or like occasional table, that type of stuff. Stuff that is not necessarily like isn't the first thing you'd think of as kind of trending up, but like actually there's a huge opportunity if you're in that market to double down, in that space. And so I think now some of the trends that we're seeing are less predictable, and they really need to be more like, all right, this is my industry, this is kind of all the products and services across it. Let's go out and start checking these and see if we can find anything. And you can do that. You can do that through something like Google Trends, but you can also do it just going into your ad campaigns and kind of seeing if there's anything that's really, whether, it could just be that it's used up all its budget much quicker than usual or something like that. In the cost side, it is harder, like on the cost of advertising, it's harder to fully know where we're at the moment. I definitely think that it isn't a matter of every industry being the same. So like overall costs seem to be down. Costs are down overall, but there's definitely audiences that are probably a little bit more expensive or more difficult to reach, and that and so I think that is the case where that's probably going to change quite a lot in the next month or so. And so I wouldn't depend on the cost or the price that you see right now as being there ongoing, because I don't like, there's a lot of businesses that when they do activate their marketing, again, this is an assumption, but I think they'll probably activate digital first. It just makes sense. And as that starts to happen, then the prices are gonna go up just naturally.
Yeah, sure.
And there's search campaigns that I don't think really ever went down. Like businesses just left those on. That's been a place that has been much more steady overall.
Yeah, I think, but they were like in that respect, I've seen on some of the campaigns I'm across as well, where they left the campaigns on, but search volume just went off a cliff, right? Because it was in the event space or it was in the travel space or whatever. So like, the impressions have just stopped, right? And so then, it comes back again, and then the campaigns are all working again. But I do think there is a trend towards online. that's something that we've been seeing quite a lot of as well in terms of, people trying to buy stuff online. I do think that everybody actually being stuck at home is going to push a lot more people to be online and to have at least an online presence, so that I guess if a business is ever stuck again, like in this scenario, they can still sell. They can still have a business, right? And, because not everybody, unfortunately, has been able to run their business in this time, and I think that fear or that experience is going to cause a level of trauma that will kind of cause people to kind of, I guess, insure themselves against this happening again and have an online kind of experience. But also the shoppers are just going to become a lot more comfortable shopping online because they have been for the last 2 months, so that's going to kind of increase a lot.
And that actually, that kind of brought up something that I've been thinking about as another trend. This is a little bit more of a market trend, but I think there is a trend towards local as well. People really, like, I've found it, maybe this is more anecdotal, but I have seen it across a lot of my personal experiences, talking to other people, and where possible in campaigns where, because everybody knows what businesses are going through right now, being able to support local businesses seems to be, a priority for a lot of people. And those businesses, a lot of them have tried to go online in one way or another, in the last month. And like, some of the ways they've had to do that is like, there's a business near me where it's a restaurant and you have to send them an email with your order the night before, transfer the money to their bank account, and then you can go pick up your order the next day, right? Like they just don't have any other way to do it. But like, people are buying from that restaurant because it's nice to be able to get some takeaway food, but also it's nice to support locally. And I think that, like, if I was predicting, that would be something that I would think will continue. And so, where you have an opportunity to talk to your local community, I would look at that as something to prioritize.
Super point. Next question. So what are your audience segments? Who are your most valuable clients, and have they changed? This is a question that we ask a lot of our clients, right? This is something that we've asked every client and that we ask everybody who we work with, because whatever it was pre-pandemic might not be the same post-pandemic, right? It just might not be that. We don't know right now.
Yeah, and it's going to be, this is so hard. I think if you've had a lot of customers through the last month, then you are able to see, how they've changed, from the period before. But a lot of businesses haven't, right? So this is going to be kind of a little bit of like, they need to explore this question to find out, has their market changed? Is there a different opportunity out there? I would certainly, if you have no idea the answer to this question, I would start with the market that worked before, right? Like that is always start with something proven before you go to, something that's based on assumptions. But I think this is a really hard one. And I don't think it's one that, I think it's one, Web Profits as an example, like we're exploring this question a lot right now to find out, what are the types of businesses that want to work with us right now. We can definitely see that like a lot of the businesses that are the most interested in marketing right now are in the e-commerce space or want to be in the e-commerce space, right? So we've definitely seen that segment of our business become more prominent. But I'm not under any assumption that that's going to remain the same in 2 months when things have started to change quite a bit.
I think that's a super point as well, in that the audiences may change. And I think depending on where you want to be at the end of 2020, right? And if we have that as kind of our lens for this discussion, right? Like it's not what's it going to be like in 3 years. We said we have 8 months left, and how do we make the most of it? And if we consider the 4 months that just passed, how long that felt, if you were to double that, that's how long we have left, right? Your audiences may change a few times in that period, right? It may be a certain kind of audience which you can adapt to, like in this pandemic stage, at the next stage when things start actually opening up, there might be some, like, it could change again at that point. And then at the end of this year or at the beginning of 2021, it may go back to normal, you know, like to what it was prior. But the advice I'm giving, like in the conversations I'm having across the board with business owners, with clients and so on, is, do you really want to wait and see? Or would you want to be that company that adapted fast, that found a way to grow, that questioned everything, and that put in the extreme amount of hard work to make it all happen? Yeah?
I think
because if you're
like,
not, the competition is going to do that. Someone's doing that.
I mean, I would assume any business I was in right now, literally, I mean, I can't think of an industry that this doesn't apply to. I would assume that there's somebody at home right now, like planning, you know, how to disrupt that industry, right? Like there are lots of really smart people with a lot of time right now that are seeing this as an opportunity to really come into markets that have been pretty well protected. And, you know, I mean, that's always the case, right? But like all of a sudden everybody, well, a lot of people have a lot more time and their ability to collaborate has just in some ways improved quite a lot, because all of a sudden there's, you know, this global collaboration, which has been made possible, you know, through the tools, and also just the fact that, you know, more people have time to get involved with stuff. And so I think that's like if I was going to have something that I just live with, the, you know, the fear that motivates me as a business, I would be assuming, you know, that's coming, and I want to have the intensity to make sure that I'm kind of building out my strategy and plan to be strong, not just strong when I get back to what I think it's going to be in January, but strong through the rest of the year.
Super point. And I think that that strength, the grit, the determination, the amount of time and effort and everything that you put into it is going to make a huge difference right now. Like I was speaking to somebody, I think even just last night, just saying, like, and they were asking me, like, how has the business been with all this? And I was like, you know, in that first 2-3 weeks was the most challenging time, I think, in my professional career. The things that we had to do in 2 weeks, from the time that the lockdown hit and it got bad really quick, to the time that we changed everything from the product, the marketing, to everything, to then being kind of back into like a more, to seeing some growth. That period was very challenging. And not that we've kind of relaxed at all, but the pressure's a little bit less because now we've transitioned already, you know, like a bit. And so now we understand what's involved in that process. But before was like, we have never had to just like that change everything, question everything, shift everything, you know. And I think that kind of approach, that psychology kind of has to be, I think, like inbuilt across the board, like in every organization now, that kind of, you know, the speed of adapting, you know what I mean? That like the agility behind it, essentially, right? But anyway, I digress. Sorry, Ben.
No. I was thinking the word that I really liked was grit. It kind of speaks to the moment a little bit in a way that I think is powerful. Like a lot of people are, you know, a lot of businesses aren't able to have the kind of standard of design or, just take like making a video right now or something like that, right? Like people understand what you can and can't do, and that you may not be able to put together like a massive product shoot and get everybody together and do this or that. But grit is something that I think people value a lot right now. Like seeing businesses trying, seeing businesses that, you know, kind of are owning this moment in a way, you know, that is hardworking, but proactive. Like that feels like You know, if I could instill values in a business, like I think that would be one of the core ones that would serve them well.
Yep.
Right
Yeah,
now.
for sure. For sure. So the first few questions that we've asked, the first four questions actually that we asked were about the market, about the audience, about kind of the business, right? We're going to now shift to more specific questions around kind of how do you get people to spend money with you, right? Because assuming now you know where you can compete and where you could be the best, and you have hopefully like an unfair advantage, you know where you're the most profitable and or where is the most demand right now. You understand the trends in your market and you're trying to ride that wave, and you've identified the audience segments, right? Like you kind of know these are the audience segments that I can do business with, right? And I need to experiment on those. Now it's all about, cool, so now I have that and it's time to go to market, right? Now, how do you adapt your product or service to offer more value at a lower price? Yes, can this be a loss leader? You know, and I think just to start this conversation, it's going to be hard to get people to spend money just in general. Like your competition is not the other organizations that are competing to get that same dollar. That is part of your competition. But I think the biggest competition is people just wanting to save, is people just wanting to not spend money, you know? And I think thinking about, cool, so how do you start to to adapt what you sell so that it provides extreme value compared to the price? Now they're like, well, that's solid, right? And I think the value part of like an offer at the moment, or the value part of the sales and marketing process, is critically important. Like, and it's only going to become more. What do you think of that statement, I guess, or that question?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with it. I think that one of the first steps to kind of figuring that out is probably understanding. So we've talked about kind of like a hierarchy of needs that people have, and understanding kind of where your product or service fits in those hierarchy of needs, right? Like, you know, food, shelter, and heat is like, those are the fundamental ones, right? Like you're you know, you're going to be able to convince people much easier of the need in those spaces, and you know, and I think you can that there's like more direct marketing that you can do around there as you kind of move up into things that are more you know, things that people will enjoy, that they want, you know, that are I guess move into more luxury. Then I think part of it is like breaking expectations, right? Like when people have an expectation of something in this space is going to cost this much, or you can only ever get one of them, or you know, shipping always takes 8 weeks. You know, like something that I think you really need to find the place that you can just shatter those expectations, because then you kind of start to build that momentum of you know, of kind of demand, psychologically, and it doesn't have to be price. Like I think that's one of the things. Like the easiest one that people think of is like cut the price in half, right? But like there are other ways to go about it. It really is just thinking, you know, what are the main considerations that consumers are going to have in the process of purchasing, you know, this product or service, and how do I really surprise them somewhere in that process? I think that's kind of the way that I would approach it. You know, and you know, that it's something that you can test a lot on, which is good, right? You can put different kind of offers out there, and see what breaks through. Because I do think that like everything's changed, but like I come back to this kind of not even just in this moment, but like the fundamentals of marketing don't really change, right? There's like fundamentals of kind of execution, which is all the different channels. And then there's the fundamentals of like marketing, you know, which is a lot more psychological. And, you know, those still apply. It's just a matter of, you know, how you can break through has changed and gotten harder.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that then leads us to the next question, which is how can you make it as easy as possible to do business with you? And that could be pricing, that could be guarantees, that could be the terms of payment, that could be anything. And I think comes back to exactly your point right now, right? This is kind of like, this is like old school marketing, like at its best, right? Where it's like, you need to make an offer so good that they can't say no. Now that might not, it might not always be possible to make something so good that they can't say no. But the closer that you can get to that point by questioning everything about actually how you charge and then how you offer it and then how you position it will have a huge impact. Yeah, like I think too many companies just say, well, this is my price. This is how much it costs. It's X amount per year. Yeah. It's $150. It's $16,000, whatever else it is. Rather than saying, well, yes, it's $16,000, let's say, but you can start for $500. And then at this point, you can get a guarantee saying that, I say, for example, if you're not happy for whatever reason, we'll give you back your money. That's just like a really small example, right? Versus it's 16 grand, right? So just thinking about, how do you make it as easy as possible to do business with you?
Yeah. And I think that's like, it is thinking a little bit about your business model and being willing to shift it a bit, to make sure that you're leading with more value, right? Like that's kind of another fundamental principle of marketing is, successful marketing is about delivering value in everything that you do, and you're going to have to find ways to lead with more value right now. And the best thing you could possibly do is find a way to deliver a lot of value at a pretty low price point that makes it easier for consumers to just go for that. And then they'll buy in, and then they'll see what they're going to get from working with you, and then you can move into where you're profitable. I think that's like a model that can work for a lot of businesses. Other businesses may have more of a kind of traditional, like, well, we want to sell them this product. Once we get them to sell this product, then we're going to move them onto some recurring product that's going to build up their lifetime value or something like that. But I do think that if you can't find a way to lead with a lot of value at a low price point, then think about what you can give away, right? Think about, sometimes it's as simple as if you have a service and you're trying to get businesses to come on for that service, you may need to give away some consulting time at the start, which is going to add a lot of value, but then they're going to be able to see what it's like to work with you.
Right.
So that's kind of, I think that's the approach that businesses need to take. I don't want people to come away thinking, what we have to do is just cut our prices, or what we have to do is just give away our products or services, right? Like it isn't about that. It's about value, right? Like if your product or service right now already showcases the value that consumers are going to have, or businesses are going to get from it, then go with that, right? Like don't break something that already works. I think that should be the first thing we always say. But right. But it's knowing that it's going to get harder, you just need to be open to evolving.
Yeah, and I think like in an environment like this where you're trying to make it like as easy as possible to do business with you, and you're trying to get them in the door, you need to have something awesome. If it's not awesome, none of this is going to work. So that's just like a default expectation that the first question that we posed, which is where are you the best right now, really, really important to link this to, because if you make it super easy to do business with you on something that isn't that good, that doesn't kind of have that much value, it's a dangerous place to be, because it's just going to expose everything.
Yeah, I've been in those conversations where people are like, oh, well, we can give that away. And then what we'll do is we'll just like cut out these parts of it. and and it'll sound really good and people will buy it, and it's just like, no, that's not, like, the point is not to get people to buy something. The point is to get people to buy something that they're going to get a lot of value of and want to buy the next thing from you.
More things, exactly.
And that's I think that's a mistake a lot of businesses make.
Yeah. Next question number 7. What offer can you create to promote aggressively in the market? The better the offer, the more traction you'll see. And I know this is something which you're doing across the e-commerce clients that we have. So, I mean, let's start there.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, what we have a framework that we use to look to build out offers, which is basically, product, audience, message. Right. Those are the 3 kind of core parts of a successful offer. And, when you build your offers around kind of an understanding of, like, this is who we're trying to speak to, this is how we're going to say it, and this is what we're going to deliver. You can really, you can build a successful marketing strategy around that quite well. But I do think that it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, which is that, like, one of the ways that you really scale is you scale through an offer. A lot of businesses like to try to, or think about, scaling everything. And that's really hard, because that means, like, you need to find a way for every single part of, thing that you sell or service that you have, for all of them to really be growing, ongoing.
Right.
The more straightforward way is to, test out a bunch of different offers, find the one that can really break through, the audiences it can break through, then go find new audiences that, that it'll work for, and grow that way. And so I think that's, it's simpler. You have consistent messaging. You can ensure that it aligns with your brand, and and what you're able to deliver much easier, because you're really just focused on the one thing. If you're e-commerce, you can plan for fulfillment, like all of those types of the business side of it. You can be ready for the scale. But I think it's I think it's a way of thinking about your marketing that's more important now, but has always really been the way to go to market.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to add to that point as well, when I talk about offer, I'm talking about something that they're going to spend money with you on. It's not something free. Of course, I think that's right. They're important as well, but creating an offer, which, like, that's what you push. That's the thing which you sell. And it takes into account everything that we've already just spoken about, right? In terms of pricing and value and kind of the segments and, like, the audiences, and kind of how do you fit in that? And then how do you create, like, an offer that's so good that they can't say no to, but that adds value, that is hopefully profitable for you, and so on, right? And it's just a way to get the foot in the door, Question 8, where are you getting the best performance from your marketing? Where can you double down? Where can you dominate the market? And how can you be effective with your advertising spend? You know what I mean? Like, this is kind of the marketing. This is the marketing question right now, right? And so everything up to this point hasn't really been about marketing. It influences marketing, and it's going to help your marketing. This is the first time that we're actually saying, where is the marketing actually working right now? And this is, I think you touched on it earlier on around, just have a look at your current campaigns, if there are campaigns actually running, and, like, kind of have a look at the search impressions and the spend and stuff like that, and see the places which are already performing, right?
I think that's right. I also think that I have a hard time giving advice to just double down on one platform or another, because we know from experience on our end that, when we do lots of content marketing, for example, we get a lot more leads through other channels. And when we pull back on our content marketing, we don't get as many leads. But at the same time, with exceptions, not a lot of the leads come directly through the content, And I think that if I'm a a business, especially a business in service or in a high-priced, a high price point e-commerce, I'm going to assume that the consumer journey has lengthened. That people are going to take more time to consider, and so for that reason, I'm going to assume that like I need to be on all like remarketing to them across all channels and having an email strategy in place. All of that is going to be working together, potentially even more than in the past. So really, I mean, I think there's kind of the simple answer to this question, which is like Facebook's really cheap right now. Everybody's on Facebook, like just go for it, right? But like that is, and yeah, I mean, I agree with that. But I also think that if you're just going for it in one place, then you're not going to succeed. Like it needs to all be part of a strategy across those kind of core digital, fundamental areas. And without that, it's just competitors will beat you. I just believe that very strongly.
If I can just on that point, maybe add something is, yes, you need your foundation across all the channels, right? Because yes, the consumer journey has lengthened, I believe, as well. Especially like on stuff that's a bit more expensive. Like if it's over $100, right? Just think it's going to take longer. So you need to be everywhere and you need to be retargeting. But you might find that you get a lot of your volume in through Facebook or through search or through LinkedIn ads, right? Say for example, right? Like, and so if you're getting all your leads out of LinkedIn ads, just put everything into there until the point where that's not actually viable anymore, right? You still need all the other channels to be there supporting that, but there may be a core channel where you are getting the better performance, right? And so I guess I just kind of like adapt my question to include the foundations have to be there. You can't just be like, well, I'm only doing search and I'm not doing email marketing,
I think it's like you're one of the most like agile marketers I know, right? Like you see something working and you're just like, all right, we're doubling down on this and we're going to make this work. And I think that is like, that's very effective. And we've seen the results of it. And I think in general, my tendency is a little bit more of like, I want to make sure I have really strong focus on, the foundations and then kind of evolve above that. I actually think it comes a lot to like the experience we have as marketing. You do a lot of marketing with other entrepreneurial businesses and with web profits where you really own it and can kind of move as fast. Whereas I've done a lot more marketing with businesses that are trying to move into digital or haven't done any marketing before. And so, setting those foundations.
And big brands you work with and huge organizations with a lot of stakeholders and so on, and you move fast for them, but it's still a process. It's still a process. It's still a process and a half. But look, I do think like on the marketing side of things, almost like you need to be good at marketing. Yeah. And so that everything that we've just spoken about, you can promote effectively, right? Like if you can't communicate that message effectively across all channels to the right audiences and say the right things and create the right automations, you're not going to actually, it's going to be very difficult to close that loop, right? But let's move on just from this point to the next part, which is sales. And the question is, what changes can you make in your sales team to capture every opportunity and extract as much value as you can from your marketing?
Yeah,
it's a big one.
I think that, marketing and sales have they are directly connected to each other and there's a lot of tension between them always. But the main thing would be to not assume, first of all, that your sales process that worked before is going to keep working. To respect every lead with maybe a level that you wouldn't have before when you had more volume. Put more time and effort into every lead. I think for any sales team out there, past leads that didn't go through to a sale is like a huge opportunity to come back to right now, because it's going to be hard to find, the volume of new leads that you previously had. And then I think the last one is kind of like, it's almost like sales marketing, which is like the messaging you're using through your sales process needs to fit what consumers or businesses can say yes to right now. And that's one I've worked with a couple businesses that their marketing has shifted a lot, and their sales team is looking for the exact same kind of leads and conversations that they had before. And I think that's a recipe for I don't want to say failure, because I think we're going to make it work for businesses, but it's not going to work.
Yeah. Look, I think just on this point here, the sales and marketing departments usually don't agree, especially if it's on lead quality. If it's e-commerce, this is probably not the question for you, but outside of e-commerce, right? Just when you actually have to have a conversation with a prospective client and sell them on something. There's always been the conversation of lead quality to lead volume and all that type of jazz. And, I think there's responsibilities on the both sides of the fence. Yeah. But marketing kind of has responsibility, and sales has a responsibility as well. And I think the sales and marketing teams need to work better together to really understand everything about what's happening in the market. What are the leads that we're getting? How is the quality of those leads? You probably are going to need the leadership team across that, because you may need to adapt certain things to take advantage of certain opportunities. You need to be hunting down people who download like lead magnets even, right? Just to have the conversations. Now, this is all assuming that you're not getting the sales which you need. If you are getting the sales, great. Then this question is not for you, right? But there aren't many organizations I know that are getting the sales that they want to be getting, right? And so the sales and marketing machine's always on, and there's always that the friction between sales and marketing. I think it's so hard to generate leads right now, just in general, right, of people who want to spend money with you, that you need to be extracting as much value as possible, right? But then the feedback on those conversations has to get back into marketing again, right? And so that's that kind of account-based marketing approach, but across everything, right? Where kind of the sales and marketing teams are integrated, right? Because it's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. And everything that we've just spoken about with the offer and, the guarantees and the pricing and all that, the sales team are the ones that have to pull that all in and close that deal, right? And these are really hard, right? And I guess the question is more, how do you change the processes at the sales level to really extract every opportunity, right? Because sometimes I've seen it as well. You only want to talk to the good leads. You don't want to talk to leads that haven't specifically requested a phone call sometimes, right? Because it's a little bit harder to cut through, right? And the companies that can cut through are going to stand out.
And this is a responsibility on both ends, but make sure the sales team know what's going on in marketing, right? They need to be able to speak to the offers and the messages that have been, out in the market. And especially with how fast things are changing, it's pretty easy for people to get left behind. So that's definitely another part of it.
And also to all the marketers out there, because, just in case it seems like I'm skewed towards supporting the marketers and not the sales team, right? There are bad leads. There are poor quality campaigns. Conversion is not enough. Quality of conversion is important as well. And so getting the feedback loop and then having to change things to improve quality is the marketers, it's what they have to get done, right? And so it's on both sides, right? And it's that partnership between sales and marketing that just has to be extremely tight, which is extra communication. But it's going to be critically important because the companies that can do that are going to get that piece of that pie, right? And that's what this kind of whole point is about. Final question. If you had to make a big bet, if you had to make a big bet on one offer to go to market with and to rally your team around, what would it be? And the question here is just to get you thinking about this, right? You only need one good offer to scale a company to millions and millions of dollars, right? And everything supporting that has to work. The sales and the marketing and the product,
That's right.
like, the service and the delivery of the service and all that has to work. But you only need one good offer, right?
Yep.
And so, just up until this point, we've talked about 9 questions. And like, if you go through and answer all of these questions, you're probably going to start to get a vision, like, in your mind of, like, I think it could be this, right?
Yeah.
And this is the hard part now, because you need to actually to make a choice right now. And if you had to choose, what would it be? And how do you make something that good that it could scale everything around?
I like the idea, the part of that question where you talked about, like, rally your team, because I actually think that, like, one good indicator is what everybody gets excited about. We've had conversations about, we're only going to produce really great content on something that we believe in, that we're passionate about, and that applies to businesses as well. I mean, it depends on culture. It depends on a lot of different factors. But for the right types of businesses, like how your employees and everybody in the business react to what you want to take out to market is I think a really good indicator of what can succeed. So I just kind of, that part of the question I like, because it's pretty. It's a pretty amazing thing to be part of a business when everybody gets excited about something and is pushing towards a common goal. And so I think, that's one thing to keep in mind. And if you can create, then that's awesome. The others would be, I mean, I think it is a matter of taking the time to think about these things. Everybody's moved so fast that people, and maybe this kind of ties back to, like, the overall theme that we're trying to get to, is planning for the year ahead. I mean, the last month or two, we've been planning for the day or week ahead, usually, and that's been necessary. I do think we're kind of, like, there's a few different phases of what we're going through. I think there was the first phase, which was just like everybody kind of paused and pulled back and tried to figure out what was going on. And then there was the phase that we probably are maybe towards the end of, which is kind of like, how do I market, specifically around kind of like COVID-19 and, and this kind of very intense stuck at home situation. We're slowly, and who knows where the dividing line between is, we're going to be moving into, what we've kind of like marketing during a recession, marketing where everything is online. It's different, right? It isn't as specific to kind of the circumstances of the last month. And it doesn't have to be like, you can't leave the house or anything like that. Right. But now that we're in that transition, I think it's the right time to actually spend the time to think about, maybe you don't need to think about what you're going to do for the whole year, but you can start, I think, thinking about the next couple months makes a lot of sense. And these questions are a really good frame to go through and build out that kind of plan. Because it'd be easy to kind of just keep going with what you've built from the last month. And we've kind of talked about it. People are getting pretty tired of some of the marketing that they're seeing right now, because everybody's speaking to, them being stuck at home, or COVID-19, or, what they can't do. All of these types of things, and they're going to want businesses to be inspirational, to be creative, to be visionary on what's coming, like all these types of things. Now that we kind of know what we've got, now that we know, what the situation is, I think people want to be looking forward. And so now it's kind of a good time to build out that framework.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that these questions you should be asking yourself every month right now, just to make sure that it's happening. Because what we know for sure for 2020 is that it's the year of change, and I think in that environment, it's pretty tiring to be in a business and to try to make it successful. And it's easy to go down the wrong path oftentimes. The good news is that when you go down the wrong path, the revenue quickly shows you. So you get to quickly kind of see the response from that. And so I think asking these questions on a regular basis is something healthy. It's something that every company should be doing. It's something that we're doing, and it's something that we're asking all of our clients to do as well, like we're doing it with them. Ben, thank you for joining me on a podcast today again. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've had fun. Hopefully you've had fun too. And thanks for joining, and we'll talk soon. See you, mate.
See you.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Manifesto podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please head on over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. For more episodes, please visit growthmanifesto.com/podcast.